over the decades that this state has had head to the ground. We have tens of thousands of our fellow citizens who have trouble getting jobs, who have trouble getting loans for school, and we need to erase their records, set aside those convictions. And so what I need you to do is I need you to call your lawmakers, call your state senator, call your state representative, and tell them, I want expungement for all cannabis crimes, and I want it to be automatic. I don't want my brothers and sisters to have to go to court and pay for a lawyer and go through some sort of process. Automatic expungement for cannabis crimes. And if all of our voices are echoed up to Lansing to call for that, we can make change just like we did last November. So thank you for having me on this stage. Thank you for coming this year, and thank you for coming next year to check out our progress in Lansing and whether these politicians are listening to the people. Thank you. All right, Laith Al-Sadi.
Well, how's it going, Hash Bash? You know, I don't know whether I should be saying this, but the first time that I ever smoked weed was before coming down here when I was 13 years old for the Hash Bash. And growing up in Ann Arbor, I've always been able to enjoy the more tolerant marijuana policy in the Midwest and a really awesome community here. He's been to Ann Arbor a few times. He was here at the original Free John Sinclair rally in 1971. But this gentleman is the founder of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Law, NORML. Please put your hands together for Mr. Keith Strupp.
Thanks, Brent. I'm a 75-year-old public interest lawyer from Washington, D.C. I smoke pot and I like it a lot. There is absolutely nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana by adults. And it doesn't matter whether you smoke it for medical reasons or recreational reasons, it's simply none of the government's business. There's nothing wrong with smoking pot. NORML has always stood for the elimination of all penalties for the personal possession and use of marijuana. We think consumers have the absolute right to grow their own marijuana, and we also favor a legally regulated market because for most of us, we're not going to take the time to learn the skills to grow good marijuana. We're going to go to a nice dispensary and buy it. When Gallup poll had just done their first poll asking Americans how they feel about marijuana smoking in 1969. The year before, we found it normal. Before that, they didn't even think it was an important enough question to ask. At that time, 12% of the country supported what we were trying to accomplish, and 88% were opposed to it. Today, after a long, steady growth that went over about 4 decades, we now enjoy the support of 65% and higher support full legalization, and almost 90% support the medical use of marijuana. So the reality is we have finally won the hearts and minds of a majority of the American public. And most interesting, it's not because they're necessarily smokers. Only roughly 14% of the population identify as current users. Others try it once a year or so, but maybe 14% are regular users. The reason we're winning is because we have the support not only of the smokers, but of the non-smokers. They finally realized that prohibition causes more injury than you could ever be caused by marijuana. And in the end, I like to remind people, this fight is only incidentally about marijuana. It's really about personal freedom. And with your help, we're going to continue to restore a measure of personal freedom to the lives of tens of millions of responsible marijuana smokers all across this country. Stay high, get up, stand up, light up, and let the world know how you feel.
So I have had the unique perspective of seeing both sides of this issue. It wasn't too long ago, 6 years or so ago, that I was probably locking people up for being in possession of marijuana or encouraging the officers on my shift to do it. Yeah, boo. So back in November, Michigan voters, all of you out there, we went to the polls and we answered their reasons for prohibition, that it is no longer. It doesn't make sense. And law enforcement especially needs to move on to dealing with crimes with victims. No longer do we need to have hundreds of thousands of untested rape kits sitting on crime lab shelves because they have testing marijuana as a priority in crime labs. No more in the state of Michigan, and it was 40% of their caseload in the crime labs here. So hopefully this is an awakening that law enforcement no longer needs to make cannabis a priority. He often says, I would rather have a bad law and a good attorney general to interpret it rather than a good law and a bad attorney general, such as we had with the decimation of the medical marijuana community from the wrath of Bill Schuette. Fuck Bill Schuette! Fuck Bill Schuette! Fuck Bill Schuette! All right, well, it's been great to be part of this today. Truly an honor to be on this side of things now with all of you. And now that prohibition is over, we can truly enjoy this day freely. Thank you.
All right, let's hear it for Steve Miller again. All right, our next guest has the distinction of being the most dedicated archivist of the history of this particular event. If you haven't already, if you go to freedomactivist.net, you can see a compilation of many important things that have gone on over the years here. Nobody's distinguished himself more for having a passion for making sure that this is kept in the history books as it happened. It's a pleasure here to bring to the mic, who just came up from recording right there, Mr. Rich Burkett. All right.
Hey, I've been living in Mexico for the last 10 years, and I've been coming up here every year to archive this event. I'm an archivist, one of them. And this is the first time I've been here when it's legal. I smoked my first legal joint in Michigan just a couple days ago. Yeah! But I wanted to follow up on what Adam started, Adam Brook, was all the, it's a great time to be alive. But unfortunately, there are many activists that didn't live long enough to be able to celebrate like we are today. And I wanted to name their names and have a 5 seconds of silence after that. Michigan activists include Renee Emery Wolf, Greg Piasecki, Larry Bonner Lippert, Tom Crossland, Rolly Rahm, Perry Bullard, who used to be a state rep here. He got photographed smoking a joint at the second hash bash in 1973. He got a bunch of shit for it. And Kathy Kennedy. Now, national activists that are no longer with us include Chef Ra, who was, his given name was James Wilson, Jack Hare, Gatewood Galbraith, Ben Mazel, or Mazel, I'm not sure which, Don Fiedler, not Fiddler, or Fielder, Robert Randall, Jackie Rickert, Ron Krickenberger, Peter B. Lewis. Now, that was the billionaire that's been financing all this stuff. He died. He was the chair of Progressive Insurance. Carl Sagan, and last but not least, Dennis Perone. 5 seconds. Okay. John Sinclair got put in prison. He had a 10-year sentence. He only served 2 of them for giving someone, an undercover cop, 2 joints. Something that's now legal today. So I would like to know, who needs a joint. Raise your hand. If you don't already have a joint. I'm talking about people who are truly in need. Okay, now keep your hand up. Somebody that has an extra joint, give these people a joint. Something that John Sinclair would have gotten 10 years in prison for in 1967. Or if you want, you can do a joint exchange. You know, if you have extra joints and you'd like to trade somebody for their joint, let's do a joint exchange. Hold your joint up and see if anybody wants to trade. Okay. One last thing. I've heard from many of the food servers that work in the restaurants in Ann Arbor, and they complain hash bashers are poor tippers. And they actually lose money during the hash basher. We got to change that. Now, I know not everybody can afford a good tip, but for the people that can, tip extra to make up for the people that don't. I do. I give double tips today. Okay? Do that, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rich, and hello, Hash Bash 2019. My name is Abby, and I'm the president of Green Wolverine here at the University of Michigan. And before introducing our next speaker, I just wanted to let you know about the 2nd Annual Michigan Cannabis Leaders Summit, which will be held next weekend, Sunday, April 14th. We'll have speakers talking about policy, science, and business in cannabis. And tickets are on sale right now for $4.20. You can find us on Facebook as well as our website, greenwolverine.org.